Good morning and welcome to the Capital Gang. I am Oscar Semoyam Soke, and as Moses of a morning show would say, with a bevy of topics, Moses is still in the studio. I told him I came via Old Chira Road. Old Chira Road, those are no longer potholes, they are craters. They are craters, and the irony is, I don't know whether Honorable Mukasambi, that's your area, because the irony of because I don't know what words you will use for Old Chira Road. The irony is those potholes are craters, and then on the side of the road you have something like 50 workers. All the 50 workers are sweeping the drainage channel. Okay, it is confounding. You just need to go there and have a look.
Those are tenderpreneurs.
Tenderpreneurs.
Yeah.
Who, the one sweeping the road?
Yes.
Or the deployer?
You know, we have choreographed a system of administration that has definitely amended the objects for which government is formed. The Kenyans have, of course, with the reference to stomach as tumbo, the government officials have been referred to as tumbocrats. then instead of having entrepreneurs, we have fellows that have crafted a process of obtaining tenders, whether or not they are necessary. They have become tenderpreneurs. Yeah. Then we have those that have got a lot of power without official positions. The eminence grease. You find that somebody has a lot of power, but without an official position in government.
Some of these words, when you say them, you may have to spell them. What was the other one you said?
Eminence grease.
Yes.
Eminence, that one is, grease is G-R-I-S-E. We have got these fellows. You ask that, what is the portfolio of this particular person? He seems to be, or she seems to be wielding a lot of power, can decide issues, can even change the opinion of the president on matters. What does he do? He said, no, he's closer to power.
So you're most welcome to Gang, Honorable Mukasambide. We have missed you. It's good to have you back. And I saw you driving in. We came a little bit earlier and had a chat.
Yes, sir.
You are unscathed. Looks like you survived Mbarara. No injuries on the body or car.
Right. No, the people trusted us with the new mandate.
Right. Okay. Most welcome, Angelo Izama, to the Capital Gang.
Thank you, Oscar. Thank you for having me.
Yes, I was with you in a week with on
doing battle.
Doing battle, and you seem to have won, but later in the day, because the voting continued, the opposition of that debate took it, and that's technology for you.
No, I think
is that rigging for you?
I think that the official position is a declaration you made.
Yes,
which is that the proposition took the day.
Okay, and you know, my students also are watching online, and I suspected they tinkered with those results.
No, but it was a good sport.
Yeah,
I still miss the, that Oxford style debate, where you've got, two respectful sides arguing on the issues and trying to persuade a crowd. I think the entire country actually misses just that sort of debate.
Yeah. Do you know, we teach those things in school? We teach them in P4, P5, they do a debate. Then we come again, year 7, year 8, S1, S2, we teach them to debate. And then it dies. We just come to Capital Gang here and sometimes shout at each other.
The last debate I participated in was in Bali. I was part of the support team for St. Peter's College, Tororo, which was my school, and the debate leader, now deceased, was Robert Kasango, who was a year ahead of me at St. Peter's, and we won that debate too.
Congratulations, Mr. Benjamin Katana, the money man of NUP. You're most welcome to the Capital Gang once again.
The money man without money.
You know, I have brought newspapers of reports of how people are going to campaign for election and so on. And I see that NUP has declared that to get their seat free, picking nomination forms free, standing this free, doing this free, do this free. The only one party that has that category. So you can't say there's no money. You're the money man without money, since you are not collecting. NRM is going to emerge rich from this nomination exercise.
Yeah, I think what you just narrated explains why I'm a money man without money. That if we are collecting that money, then you would rightly address me as money man. But we are not, and our decision is informed by many factors. The economic realities in our country, but also that we are trying to encourage a spirit of voluntarism in running of party activities. If you compared, I don't know if the DP is collecting that money as well, but I don't think all the parties are collecting the money. But the NRM model is that, and they have their reasons for that. If you look at the salaries that the NRM people draw who run party offices, and then the people who run party offices in other parties, you'll see that still there's a big difference. So I think every organization basing on what it intends to do and its reading of the realities, it comes up with certain positions on certain matters. But for us, we believe that what qualifies one to serve is not necessarily the ability to pay,
forms,
but the ability to serve.
Okay, we will discuss that on the program. Then Honorable Katuntu is on the way. He's been out of the country. Honorable Bide, whenever he's out of the country, he brings me a book. Oh. So just something for you to copy going forward.
Much obliged.
So I'm looking forward to his presence.
Yes.
And the book he's carrying.
Much obliged. I am a person of books.
Yes.
Clearly, when I go to any country, there are things that I usually go for. The fact that I don't drink, right. I will look for their leaders, and I will definitely look for their books. That is usually what I do.
Super. And no wonder it's
then of course
to be Dr. Mbide.
I'll not tell anybody that I go to discotheques, but
yeah, we won't tell.
It is very unlikely that I live without one.
You have to get a better understanding of that particular society.
We have a guest in the studio. Is Mr. Simon Rubanga Kene. I hope I've pronounced it right. Rubanga Kene.
Yes, Rubanga Kene.
Rubanga Kene. Okay. He's from Gulu. And a lawyer. He's seated in the NRM seat of Ofonopono. He's a young man, so I hope, Mr. Rubanga-Kene, you live up to that seat.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Oscar.
Yeah.
I want to say hi to my colleagues.
You move closer to the microphone.
And to the listeners. Yeah. This is my maiden appearance on Capital Gang. And I'm late to the discussion.
Yeah. For our third topic today, we wanted to speak about Balaalo and Acholi. So when I saw you coming in, I wondered, now, are things changing with Balaalo? Because you suddenly didn't look like a Mlaro, you looked like Rubanga Kene.
Yeah, sure. I'm not a Mulala, I'm an Acholi.
Yeah, an Acholi, yes. Okay, that's going to be one of our discussions today. Star Cafe has served. Simon, you don't need to move with your chapati in the pocket. Star Cafe is safe. Even Honorable Mukasambide takes from Star Cafe. So enjoy the goodies. Let's begin with you, Angelo, who sometimes has a foot in the media world. What's happening in Kenya? Specifically, urban Kenya.
You know, there was a big youth-led protest a year ago that upended Kenyan politics in a very big way. The street protests were violent. from Uganda here. You know, our embassy was torched. I think most people saw that.
We still wonder why.
There's a general sense, I think, that Uganda is a country that leads with bad examples. And I've been talking about this in the past because, you know, when just to digress, when an agreement was made to put the oil pipeline through Kenya, a lot of the discussions involved part of this attitude. You know, when there's chaos in Kenya, especially like after 2007, 2008, Ugandan trucks, you know, the roads were blocked. There was an attempt to vandalize the railway. And because that's our main access to the sea, this relationship between Kenya and Uganda, which is sometimes, you know, turbulent, comes into play. But on the ground, you know, in judging by social media, you know, there are many accusations, many unfounded, that Uganda was somehow, you know, because of the attitude of the, this is how Martha Karua put it. She's the former Justice Minister. Her statement on the current, on the anniversary of these protests was that there has been democratic backsliding that touches all the East African countries. You know, she's also Colonel Dr. Besigye's lawyer here, and everyone knows Dr. Besigye was renditioned from Kenya under circumstances that have not been fully explained. So there's a sense amongst the Kenyan youth-led movement that Uganda is problematic, and that explains, you know, why the embassy had become a target. And this current anniversary has sort of split the Kenyan community and put the government on a back foot. It hasn't helped that it has been complicated by Kenya's default politics, you know, which is ethnic in nature. So the last I checked, you know, this morning, I understand maybe upwards of 19 people had died in the crackdown. Another 50 whose whereabouts have not been explained. The government position is that this is political in nature, involving their political opponents, and that there is some, you know, I think the Interior Minister said there is basically a coup attempt using the street. Now, if you draw back and think about it in terms of the past decade and a half, what is happening in Kenya has its roots in, you know, the street protests that began in Tunisia, which were also, you know, based upon economic troubles, you know, and then caught fire in the rest of the Arab world, toppled the government in Egypt under Mubarak. You can also associate it with the Walk to Work protests here. All of those had to do with youth discontent, unemployment, inflationary pressures, economic hardships. And so I think the governments will have to do a bit of social and political engineering to separate what an administration can do, like in this case, you know, to provide for jobs in time and improve confidence in the economy, and separate those issues from being litigated violently and politically on the street, Oscar.
And last week, we had a discussion here because there'd been riots, actually, about a young man who'd died in police custody. Then a few days later, there was another young man shot at close range, and now it's the anniversary. So are they on a spark, just waiting to go?
And I don't think so. The impression I get is that from a purely security point of view, especially these last protests, have been contained or are containable. So they are not of the character of like large-scale civil strife that led to the government of national unity in Kenya in 2008. These, I think, eventually will have to be resolved through the Kenyan elections that are upcoming. As you mentioned, a lot of the tension is in the urban centers. What has emerged, which is really interesting, and you can draw a parallel to Benjamin's party, is that there's a wave of political participation by young people who are basically identifying themselves as young people. And I haven't seen it yet, but I'm sure the phrase "people power" will soon be applied to some of the protest movements and their political agenda in Kenya.
Honorable Mkasambini, what's your take on this unrest?
Yes. First of all, when you are to look at Kenya now, it is extremely important to give it some kind of historical measure that make it a logical necessity to function the way it is functioning. What we usually call the faucet origo of a matter. Where did it begin from? It is a history of betrayal, the ethnographic nature of politics, and clearly now, of course, the generational shift in terms of understanding of the politics of the day and the character of the current politicians of East Africa. What we are looking at, when you look at the majorly two protagonist families, the family of the late Oginga Odinga and, of course, Kenyatta, that while Kenyatta was in prison, that is the pre-independence politics of Kenya, Oginga Odinga was pressurized by the colonizers to take up the mantle of the prime ministership. This is a guy that actually rejected it. He said, my master is in prison, there is no way I can take it up. Very few politicians would have done the same.
Even today?
Yes, even today. He was briefed that can't you really be the chief minister simply because some other fellow is in prison over certain questions that he needs to answer for. He said, how can I be better when my master is incarcerated? So when the guy came from prison, obviously, he took over the mantle of the country, appointed him vice president, and that worked. For only a period of between 1 to 2 to 3 years, the betrayal appeared. He was dismissed. So now betrayal begins from that time. By a guy that was handed over power by somebody who should have taken it anyway, but did not, it continued. That one now followed. And the two families, of course, had a feud that ensued. They call them the dynasties of politics in Kenya. Now, when it came up, of course, the sons now, because now we are looking at the period of 1991, 92, when the pressures for freedom of political parties began in Africa, that were definitely cemented in 2002 under the Kananasiki program that forced even Uganda to also free political parties. I have had a lot of politicians thinking that parties here were freed because of the referendum or because that the president of the day actually accepted that freedoms would be given as a changed state of affairs, which is actually not correct. This was a donor-driven pressure that was even culminated into establishment of a peer review process. For you to qualify for grants and donations and what, you had to indicate as a part of your application form that even parties are free. So ours were only late to exist, not afraid to perform. That is why actually the language of the day was to be Jeko. So it means there was that pressure of some other fellows that want to run parties. Clearly there is no political party that is functioning, not even NRM, but there is a government. And NRM is a uniform that is usually used for that purpose. So in Kenya, that process now started. It ensued. Raila Odinga tried, joined the KANU, again was betrayed by KANU when Uhuru was preferred as a candidate, left, joined the NACA. That is when the opposition took over. So it has become a game of the two dynasties. The only difference was when now the BBI initiative was established. It looked like these young people, of course we call them young for all intents and purposes, it looked like now Uhuru and Raila Odinga were to amend historical betrayal to the extent that the Luo now would join hands with the Kikuyu and actually form government.
In this last election?
In the last election. President Ruto incidentally had run a campaign that was, first of all, in terms of campaign financing, it was the best. In terms of appeal to the Gen Zs, the young people, it was the best. His was a hustler campaign. He appealed better to almost everybody except tribes. And now, he got elected with a difference of only 200,000 votes, where there was a lot of discontent in terms of how even the counting was done, how the servers actually continued counting even after declaration. And if anybody checked now, they would have gotten to a tune of around 40 million votes. So anybody knows that there was some bit of problem. And the country was divided in terms of support into two. Now, fun enough, the two formerly competing ideologues now worked together in what they called a broad-based government. Some Kenyans call it a bread-based. So
I had not heard that.
Bread-based. Now, to the extent then that now once a party that is supposed to perform the oversight role instead now also joins the one they ought to have oversighted, then obviously the population is left to linger within the corridor of discontent. Now the young people looked at the budget, and that was last year, and they discovered that actually they are suffering. Whoever graduates has no job. Whoever has a job loses it immediately. And the discontent had nothing to do with the tribes. They marched, they picketed, it was. But to the extent that they were dealing now with a government that had made a lot of sound promises to the extent of getting voted, but had not performed any, of course, to the satisfaction of those that had received the promises. Now, this was a national uprising. It was a national protest by the young people. The young people that have no children to take care of, but they are feeling the pinch of the economy. Young people that wanted things done, including, of course, cancellation of the budget, which was done. But we are also looking at the legacy politicians that were also interested in establishing a one-term movement for Ruto. And that is a movement that was again punctuated by Ruto's design to impeach his deputy president, who had also worked. Betrayal also. He had worked so hard. They have got their own differences, but of course impeaching him was the first of its nature in their constitution, because of course he's different from the vice presidents of the past. He was impeached, camped in the mountains, choreographed a kind of support base against the current president, basing in the mountains. Then we are looking at other politicians also emerging. Matiang'i taking the Kisii, and of course Kalonzo also maintaining hold on the Kamba. We are looking at a president of Kenya that has lost grips. Now, this is a president who has now retreated to the security circles for protection. He has engineered, because now even during these riots particularly, he has violated a court order that had stopped the state from stopping the media. A court order that actually was to the extent that if any police were to participate in the marching, they must be dressed, they could have to be identifiable. Instead, goons were sent, and of course a lot of information is now coming up that these were not goons, but these were some kind of makeshift security personnel that were sent to infiltrate the otherwise marching young protesters, cause chaos, maim, and of course choreograph a process that would later on lead to a banning of such systems from of course other governments used to use them as the Tonton Machotes. So I can tell you that we have a president that has lost it on the ground. He cannot claim that there is any tribe that is removing him. It is actually almost a national consensus that he needs to go. But of course, using now security to make sure that actually he has to stay.
One term.
Yes, it is now a one-term movement. But of course, we are dealing with a problem that we are now looking at the United States that is no longer interested in what is happening in Africa for the time being, to the extent that impunity is also now on the increase in Africa, and now particularly the East African soil. There is that worry. The citizens now need to come up and also understand that it is they that must do. When they stop the media from doing live coverage of an event, that means the state itself now has conducted a war against transparency. So what does it want to do within the protest that the media should not cover? Now, those are the questions that now the population are asking.
But these days, the media is late at covering. Social media is a giant.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that is why now we are relying on social media that is actually being led by those that are unprofessional in terms of laying ground to what actually they must be telling us what is happening. But there is a problem in Kenya, and I think prayers are required in the circumstances.
Yes. Benjamin Katana, and welcome to you, Joseph Otieno. I hope you listened last week intently as the president of the UPC was here in the studio. And he did say that your following is mostly in the media, and I told him I'll report him to you. So I have done my duty.
That was very cheeky of Jimmy. But for the record, actually, he and his group officially declared me the president of the media. But that was within the first 2 years of his dilly-dallying elsewhere, until he and his group suddenly realized that the media is part of the Republic of Uganda. They are the fourth estate. And these days I'm delighted to know that he knows, he responds to journalists, and he found his way. He found his way here. And maybe if I hadn't been in the media, if I hadn't been here, he would not have known where exactly Capital Radio is. But no, Jimmy is a fantastic brother of mine. Thank you very much for hosting him. And we are just having this conversation. I'm delighted to be here. Last weekend I was in West Nile, seeing how messy this regime has left with those people there. Ugandans on their own.
So back to Benjamin Katana. There's a regular listener, Gift Senior, says, you know, the Ruto has achieved one thing. How can Raila Odinga be with the state during his Gen Z demonstrations?
Thank you very much, Oscar. I think my two senior colleagues here have already given a historical context. But to add is that the history of liberty is a history of pushback. That human beings, when entrusted with power, always want to have absolute control over the population, in effect turning citizens into subjects. And most of the landmark events in history that have changed the trajectory have been birthed through struggle. When you look at the Ruto government in Kenya, it's a government, like my senior brother here has mentioned, has largely lost ground to govern. And what happens normally when a government loses the appeal, it results to, among other things, coercion. The example of the case of Albert Ajwang and others clearly show you that the Ruto administration have resorted to things that Kenyans had forgotten, especially after coming into force of the 2010 constitution. Abductions by people that do not even identify themselves as security personnel, unmarked cars, people dying in detention. These are things that are reminiscent of what happened at Nyayo House in the 90s under the administration of Moi. When Kenyans came together to make a constitution, what you would consider their consensus on how they should be governed, they chose never to see what they had witnessed in those years. But I think Angelo quoted Martha Karua about the shrinking democratic space in Kenya. And I think what we have witnessed is an attempt by the citizens to push back against a regime that is largely becoming dictatorial. And I remember when Ruto was campaigning for president, on many occasions he said that Kenyans would never see a government that resorts to using state institutions to do politics. And I think in this one term that he's serving, he has gone against almost every word that he promised. And I don't think coercion is going to help, because the Kenyans have a history of pushing back. Under the Moi administration, you had protests from teachers, from other trade unions, pushing back against what they considered unjust policies of the day. The history of injustice is, and the history of struggle for liberty are like Siamese twins. The events in human history, even if you looked at things like Magna Carta that have given like the blueprint for constitutions and what have you, is a history of human beings fighting for their space. The British monarch at one time was also as autocratic as any monarchy that lived at that time. But people pushed back, glorious revolution and what have you. The freedom and liberty in the French society was as a result of pushing back. So what we are witnessing are citizens pushing back to reclaim their space. Of course, my senior colleagues have talked about politics, and you mentioned how the Interior Cabinet Secretary has been talking about an attempted coup. I think every government, when it is beleaguered, it resorts to, among other things, blackmail. At least in Kenya, they are not saying that the coup is being sponsored by imperialists, but that has been the choreography in Africa. Every time there is, and not just in Africa, even in other countries, America, when there is an argument they cannot win, they say these are communists. So in Africa, when the government of the day cannot win an argument, they say these are sponsored by imperialists. They are promoting foreign ideas, and I think the speech by the Cabinet Secretary Mokomen should be looked at in that context. That even if you chose to focus on what these Gen Zs are saying, if people are demonstrating against abductions, and abductions have taken place, there have been reports in the media. To make matters worse, we have seen a case where a young person comments on social media, criticizes police administration, he's arrested and killed in detention, and people rise up. So instead of addressing the problems, you are trying to find, it's true that the political actors will always want to take advantage of circumstances.
You've said criminal intent.
Well, I'll come to that limb. But first of all, the political actors, Gachagua and the rest, Kalonzo and the rest, I'm sure if Ruto was also in opposition and there are people that are speaking against the ills of the day, he would want to take advantage of the weaknesses of the opponent. I think the Ruto administration needs to have an introspective. Many times when there is a problem, we always look for, we want to find it elsewhere except ourselves. I think it's a human weakness. Institutions many times also take on the human character. When there is a problem, instead of asking yourself, what have I done wrong, you want to focus on who is responsible for your problems, even when your own actions or inactions might be responsible for that. So I think governments in Africa generally, while globalization is under threat, there are things that have come with globalization, like social media, that are unstoppable. And as a result, even without legacy politicians or established leaders, citizens can mobilize themselves and challenge you. The leaders will eventually emerge from these movements that are springing up. Many times governments focus on dealing with established political leaders. Honorable Mukasambide here was joking about the bread-based government in Kenya. So I think in the wisdom of the UDA government, unfortunately, the bread has not been served here.
Conclude, Benjamin.
Yes, by bringing on board the Raila group under what they have called the broad-based government, they thought they were finding a solution to the problem. But I think time is coming when co-opting political leaders is not going to be a solution to cover up for injustices. The governments need to respond by finding solutions to problems that people are raising rather than rushing to co-opt political leaders whom they think are the only people that are going to lead the forces against them. The citizens now can mobilize themselves, organize themselves, and challenge you.
Well spoken. Simon Rubanga Kene.
Yes, thank you. To me, I think I looked into the aspects of Kenya in three ways. One, that Oscar, mankind is selfish. First of all, I think Ruto is disappointed, and Ruto administration is disappointed by the fact that he thought colleagues that he was trying to chase power with are not with him right now. And two, whatever he was trying to promise to the citizens at the time of seeking for power, people are disappointed that he's not the things is tabling right now. And I think what is now bringing all these things is the way he's reacting. The brutality by the security organs in Kenya is what is bringing all this mayhem. At the time, he tried to respond by bringing the young people, all the Gen Z together, and he tried to listen to them. But whatever came out of the appeal was not healing, and I think that is the reason as to why these things are coming time and again. And I believe, to me, the Ruto administration is a bad business. It's a business gone wrong.
But he organizes the elections.
Yeah, that is true. You can organize elections, but
yeah. Okay. Angelo, the problem with sometimes capital gang now, Simon is a young lawyer. He has two senior lawyers in front of him. Yes.
No. I'm not intimidated, but it's just courtesy and respect.
Right. Okay. So most welcome to Gang, Honorable Katuntu.
Thank you very much.
Yes, I forgot to tell you that the bypass, you need to give it a bit more time.
Yeah, I fell victim.
Yeah, you need to give it more time. And you're a bit lucky the president wasn't moving. Because if he's moving, then you give it a lot of time. Yes. So have you been following events in Kenya?
Oh, yes. An average politician would do that. Yeah, I have. And
how will this end? We've had a discussion and so on, but is there an end point?
Yeah, but at the time of elections.
Oh.
Don't imagine to end anywhere in between. You see, first of all, you need to look at the results of the last elections. It was more or less 50-50. If you are going to win a national election by 200,000 votes, it is a too close to call elections. And it is certainly not African that people concede defeat, especially the way that election was conducted. So it became contentious even after. The grievances were carried ahead. But Kenyan politics is such that every 5 years there is what we call an SPV, a special purpose vehicle, for purposes of elections. And then you see all these politicians running from this vehicle to the other and stationing themselves. Unfortunately for President William Ruto, he had a disagreement quite in the early hours of his regime with his main backer. It's not possible that he could have won that election if he didn't have his Gachagua on his side. And reason is, you see, when President Uhuru decided to back Raila, it meant that he would bring the block vote of the Kikuyu. Unfortunately, the Kikuyu couldn't, because the difference between the Kikuyu and then the Luo seems to be so much entrenched that they said, okay, you are our king, President Uhuru, but on this we are disagreeing. And they went with Gachagua. So Gachagua managed to bring the necessary vote for purposes of Ruto's win. Then they fell out. You can't imagine. And that caused the problem very, very early for President William Ruto. So now he starts, how do you rearrange?
Mbida has been giving that history of regular betrayals in Kenya.
Oh, yes. And then, but you can't, I don't want to say there is betrayal. You know, sometimes ambition is also a big problem if it's not tamed. There are people who really like, to him maybe he thought he had made this one and the next is automatically him, but early enough. So he also wanted to start organizing his presidents and so on. So they disagreed with his boss, really at irretrievable levels. So coupled with the usual discontent of the population, the unemployment, the economic situations and so on, it was very easy to touch on those discontents and cause the situation as it is. Whether he's now his business with Raila will help him to get the rural vote is yet to be seen. I'm not so sure whether I can speculate over that. If it is does that, then somehow, yes, you will have this discontent, but then it will not be much. About the Gen Zs, Oscar, sorry. About the Gen Zs, for sure you'll always have Gen Zs complaining. One, because there is no magic bullet for their problems. It's not there. Let me tell you, these economies, fragile banana economies, where everybody is unemployed or underemployed, you have that discontent. The economics of this country is not doing very well. It's not doing very well. How do you have the Gen Zs on your side when they lack employment, or even those who have employment are being paid nothing? So they will have that discontent. So you need to have a way of improving your economies, first of all, to have the Gen Zs on your side. Otherwise, whether it is Uganda, you have a problem. You know, when you look at Mr. Katana's party here, you know, it's purely a part of younger people. And they have taken political advantage, I might say, because there is a general economics discontent. That's why they are all in their droves to Mr. Katana's party. So unless we address that problem, is it very easy to have that problem? I'm not so sure. But as all leaders who are in power should always strive to make sure that your economy is doing well, and there is some future. There is some promise for the future of the younger people. Otherwise, the discontent, the riots, call it them a demonstration, though the Kenya at this time didn't, it wasn't a demonstration. It was pure riots. You know, thousands of business were really, in 24 hours, gone by goons that are never arrested. Gone. No, it was both. I don't want you to be a little bit biased. It was both the goons, but it was also both the rioters. So both of them were there when you analyze that situation. The Kenyan government did one thing, like many of these governments do. They also put in another group. They put in another group.
They complemented.
Yes. And then there are these ones also who have gone. You know, last time we had a little bit of riot and at KCC, I think a year or so ago, And I saw some guys who are rioting going for the policemen's daily rations. Yes, and this was purely Kaunga na Maragwe portion, but they went for it. So, but these are people who had come to demonstrate. So you have both groups which go in, and certainly the Nairobi economy must have been very, very much affected. Many guys have lost real businesses and livelihood.
Yeah. Angelo, we don't have a lot of time with you this morning. What do you take from a discussion on the table? Are we theoretically Kenya or touching issues on the ground?
The key difference between, I think, Uganda and Kenya, and Tanzania for that matter, is that in Uganda...
You've thrown Tanzania in the mix?
Yeah. Because, the question you have to ask is why you haven't yet seen the sort of mass youth-led demonstrations / riots in Tanzania. And since when we are now trying to pick up lessons from the African experience, from the East African experience, it's worth looking at what the CCM as a political organization has managed in containing. No, it's not as if Tanzania doesn't have problems. They do, but the type of party state society relations there are very different. I don't know how long that will last. There are now tensions we've seen with Chadema, but what Honorable Katuntu is saying, that a responsible administrations must, I think, prosecute the economy in a. But if you look at what Ruto's government did when the finance riots first started, their approach had been, okay, let's concede some ground, withdraw the law, engage proactively with young people and their representatives, and basically lead via dialogue. I think all of that has changed because of the usual ethnic politics of Kenya that has come in the way. There is room in a political system to lead the problems in the economy transparently, to prosecute it diligently, and I would say openly. Because what Honorable Katuntu is saying, that there is no magic bullet, is true. You cannot wave a wand and produce jobs for 2 million young people who are on the streets. But it also means that when you do take initiatives, whether it's in agriculture or logistics or transportation or the gig economy or the creative arts economy, that you should engage and consult widely. The idea of top-down politics, where you speak from high and you expect, things to work down at the bottom, I think those days are gone. Of course, that has now been complicated by instant access to what government officials are doing. The difference between what they promise and what they're doing, is a tweet away, a social media post away. So those are the circumstances. My hope is that honest government may not be lost, that the opportunity for honest government may be sustained in these problems that are modern day problems. Here in Uganda, of course, we have perhaps even a much more serious situation with youth unemployment. Kenyan economy is bigger, but our demographics is increasingly supplying the kind of pressure in our towns and cities that is unsustainable. You remember that sometime I was here and I was saying that I read a government of Uganda report that said by 2040 the urban population of Uganda will be somewhere up, upwards of 22 million. That's quite a statistic. So how do you approach this while being honest about your policies, honest about your capacity, honest about the engagement? I think that's where the challenge is, Oscar.
And President Museveni responded to the question saying Gen Z should not be rioting over local grievances, but should be agitating for East African integration. As we always preach, the path to prosperity lies in producing and selling a good or service, i.e., don't wait for those jobs.
No, but really, he is also conscious from that post that the issue is the economy. Yeah, that's what it is. Though he's prescribing something different. And when he's talking about, in my view, if I were to interpret about integration, he's talking about his best subject, a bigger market. So with a bigger market, then your economy improves and so on. I think that's the point he was trying to make.
Okay.
And he's always fond of saying, no, we are all PG economies, and so we are out who is taller than the other. But let me say this, Oscar. You see, the Kenya is faced with two problems. One, there is a genuine discontent. Then there is another discontent, people who like people who just like a regime change. You get it? So that's where the problem is. And once you get the two, because I don't know whether it was Mr. Katan talking about this sort of politicians who want to take advantage of this. Then the whole thing gets vulgarized and the state acts differently. Sometimes if you want to act because you think there's a discontent, how do I address discontent? Then there is somebody wishing regime change. So you are now fighting for your survival. And once you push a state to survive, then I'm telling you, they don't always do it the smart way.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Simon, I'll get to Joseph a little bit later, especially on matters nomination. So if we go to northern Uganda, so take us through the decree. There was a decree that Balaalo should move out of Acholi, correct?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I did try to call Honorable Dr. Mona yesterday to get the actual, but I failed to get through to him. But so it had been said that Balaalo should leave northern Uganda, particularly Gulu. Why?
I think the question of the Balaalo leaving Acholi or northern Uganda has been politicized.
Oh,
yeah. Because
what was the directive then?
The directive by the president is that the Balaalo should leave northern Uganda.
Okay.
Or actually sub-region. In fact, it has been generalized as northern Uganda, which is West Nile, and basically these people are in Lango and Acholi. This directive should have come to pass some time back. And by the fact that the president of Uganda has a listening here, it was halted. One, it is
the directive for Balaalo to leave northern Uganda was halted. Due to a popular, you're saying it was a populist decision.
Yes, it was because of some engagement.
Yeah,
which came. And the president was trying to listen to people who are bringing up the issues. He gave a listening here to the Balaalo. He gave a listening here to the people who come from the region, and there are people who formed themselves into, I think, the Landowners Association. There was a meeting which was held by the president, I think, on the 10th of November, 2023. And in that meeting, I think there were two teams. One which was led by General Charles Otema Awany, and the other team which was led by the Honorable Chief Justice Owindolo. In that meeting, they were trying to engage and to see how best they can handle the issue of the Balaalo in northern Uganda. So there was one side which says that there should be verification to see, because there were mayhems and people were crying. One side was saying these people are grabbing land and maybe they got this land illegally. Others are using force, using guns and other means to acquire this property. Then there was one side which was saying these people got land legally. Others bought. So in that conversation, stakeholders were were having engagements with the president, and they had engagements with the president. But now what I don't know is what came out of the engagement. Which decision informed the president to come up now with this decision to evict the people? Because I believe
to evict the Balaalo.
To evict the Balaalo. I believe after engaging stakeholders, he should have come with modalities and again inform the stakeholders that out of what we discussed, these are the modalities, and this is what we found out. These are the modalities, and this is what we found out, and this is how we are going to move. But this was not done.
But you would think the president naturally would be closer to the Balaalo. So by coming to that decision, you would think it has been well thought out.
No, but I think in Uganda everyone has the right to own land in any part of the country. So if someone woke up one day and went and acquired land legally and he settled, because through the engagement I talked about, there were guidelines which the president gave out. That one, there should be fencing of the land. Two, there should be a water source, a permanent water source, because the people in the community, some of them, not everyone, were complaining that the animals were causing destructions to their crops.
Nomads.
Yes. So he came up with the guidelines that you should fence at least 4 strands. I can testify to you that even some people who are grazing animals there, even people went to extent of putting 8 strands. So now, if someone acquired land and you're coming all out of the blue and chasing him and saying you should leave, I think we should try and look into that.
So we're going to stop for a break, and I want to leave you with a couple of questions to start with. You have you spoken as a lawyer or spoken as an Acholi? Because
I'm speaking both as a lawyer and also an Acholi.
Okay, so let's stop for a quick break, and after the break we'll get back to you. Welcome back from the break. Simon Rubangakene is on. Did I say it right this time?
Yes, Rubangakene.
Rubangakene is He's on the microphone. Pardon?
Rubanga means God.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
In Acholi as well?
Yes. That's what it is.
Okay. So the first question, the last question I put to you was okay. The last question I put to you was speaking as a lawyer, speaking as an Acholi, because you seem to be saying lawyer Acholi, or you seem to be saying it's okay for Balaalo to stay in Acholi.
Yeah, to me, I would say if genuinely acquired land, there is no need for him to be chased, because he has a right. And all those people who acquired land genuinely are free to stay wherever they got the land. Yes, so to me, I believe the president...
So as a lawyer, if I go and buy land in Roro, Arua, Semoyams, okay, I'd rely on you to come and stand by me.
Absolutely.
However way I bought the land.
Absolutely.
Right.
For as long as you follow all the parameters of acquiring a land in this country, you can settle.
Okay. Angelo.
Yes, Oscar. I am also from the north, but from West Nile.
Yes.
Yeah.
You have Balaalo in West Nile.
We do, actually. I once went home to visit my dad, is now deceased, and he brought some of the chiefs, and they were telling me, no, you're young, you're in Kampala, but we have an issue with herdsmen who are coming up the Nile. We don't understand how it's happening. They cannot be resisted because they have some kind of protection. Northern communities are hospitable by nature, by the way. And recently, speaking to some of their leaders, some publicly known, I asked them at what point, because we see some of these Balaalo as victims, at what point can we tell ourselves we continue to be understanding and also hospitable communities when we are basically dispossessing people, some of whom, as Ruban Kenya said, have acquired that land through some kind of contract. Now, I have a couple of things to say about this, and I'll leave Honorable Katutu to deal with the main one.
The legalese.
Yeah. We and by we, I mean the Ugandan government established a judicial commission of inquiry into land matters. It took almost 4 years or so. Right now, I think most people who are involved in this land issue should have that document and its recommendations to refer to. Where is it? Maybe Honorable Katutu, because there were like many testimonies taken. I personally went to the tribunal because I was concerned about issues in Karamoja. That information, that analysis, cost us considerable amount of money. Why aren't we relying on that? The second is that when I speak to northern leaders, I feel that they are using technical language like Ruben Kenya has used here, of contracts, of rights, to express what when they are speaking honestly amongst themselves, they see as large-scale dispossession of northern communities. They look at the Balaalo as the front guard of an attempt to continue to keep northern Ugandan communities chained, this time to poverty. Remember that northern Uganda, and I will refer specifically to Lango and Acholi and West Nile, to where I come from, were one time leaders of Uganda. They supplied presidents, they dominated the army and the economy. A lot of that was lost in the last 30 years. And in the process, particularly in Acholi, which is the ground zero for this, you had rebellions there, communities that were for almost 20 years in camps. When they emerge into this new Uganda, their same leaders are wondering, what is our place? The land issue has come in the middle of that. They think about it as dispossession. The third is that, these are, northern Uganda, Acholi and Lango particularly, were ranching communities. You should read a book called The Acholi in 1960 by David Abernathy, because he gave me his copy. In the late 60s, Acholi District Administration, which was the entity that was running during the colonial times, and I mean the late 50s, had £8 million in savings. Okay? A lot of that was from cattle ranching. In fact, the colonial administration had refused to give them grants because they were saying, you guys are too rich from your ranching business. Okay?
Interesting.
What happened? Most Ugandans don't know that those are ranching communities. Okay? Those are ranching communities.
I knew ranching community, but didn't know they were.
They are ranching economies, yes. In fact, the plan, if you look at the 60s plans when Obote comes to government, his main focus was on the ranching economy. Now we talk about the government ranches. I had people saying, these government ranches were run by individuals. No. If you look at the location of all government ranches that were put at the edge of large ranching communities. Achwa Ranch, for example, was meant, those are demonstration ranches, by the way, in the culture of the post-independence administration. All of that has been changed by politics, and I feel that these northern leaders are not being honest about what is being litigated. One of them, actually, in this case, Honorable Jimmy Akena, I met him, I spoke to him. I said, why aren't you guys being honest about this? In any case, Angelism, I want to see what your solution is in your manifesto. You understand the situation, you've lived it. His father was a rancher. He has a large ranch, actually, which is, he says is, filled with some Balaalo, okay? I'm like, okay, let us address this, but address it as an administrative issue, as something that can be prosecuted diligently.
Who is not clear? Who is not genuine? Is it the northern leaders or the ones promoting the Balaalo?
They are both. But let me digress. Yeah. So there is a government minister, UPC minister, is now dead. When I started looking at the oil and gas sector and Katutu here was my lawyer actually at that point, in 2006-7, he met me at Nando's and he told me, Angelo, there's another state minister for finance, who I will not name, has told us to each contribute 50 million shillings. And we're going to spend this 50 million on cattle and cattle keeping people, and we're going to drive them into that Blisa Valley. Okay? Yeah. So we know that there's what we call corporate Balaalo. Cattle herders from cattle herding communities who have been instrumentalized, okay, by certain people. And all of this stuff, by the way, people speak about it in tongues. But my problem is that you don't want a situation where expropriation of legal rights, okay, becomes the injury we inflict, as Rubanga was saying, on people who have maybe, Rubanga Kene was saying, who have acquired property legally, but are now being caught up in this melee by forces that don't want to reveal themselves honestly. That's the end of it, Oscar, for me.
We shall let you go.
Thank you.
And Joseph can take it up from here. It's a topic for me to discuss with Angela another time, because I could see feeling in his presentation.
But I saw Joseph smiling.
For the first time, I'm going to disagree with Abdu. That
You were smiling. That's the only thing I said.
I was smiling at the specifics, but when it came to the detail, surprisingly, I am...
By the way, Nora Oraga says that directive Simon Bagakene you mentioned was halted because of foot and mouth disease. Executive Order number 3 of 2023, which had been suspended in December 2023 due to that outbreak.
May I just interrupt there? Actually, one of the issues that is emerging is that veterinary sciences will say, and it is true, that there are herds in the north now that are infected, okay, that this order is going to just take, if you drive this cattle down south or down east, okay, en masse, you're going to cause a real crisis of cattle diseases. And this was told to me by Jimmy Akena. And it's one of the things I told him, why don't you go ahead and raise, because these are like the actual issues of the cattle economy, not these politics of the election.
Right. Joseph.
I think this is one of the most emotive issues for me. And because Angelo has been quite deep about it and quite precise, and because Abdu has got a detailed legal perspective, I'll be slightly general and trying to detach myself from the motive quality of it. The truth is this, that this Balaalo thing is not a coincidence, and there were nuances from Angelo. I had a debate with a number of leaders, one of whom is actually a northern leader with a contradicting interest on this matters midweek. And part of the conversation was that, look, today we are talking about this Balaalo element. And whereas we've talked generalities, and whereas it has been quite exciting to enlighten Ugandans that Lango and Acholi have been traditional cattle keeping communities in a huge way. We haven't mentioned Teso, nor have we reminded ourselves of Karamoja, where we have issues of land, grazing and water, but the response is to give them mabatis and goats and instruct them to change their ways of living. And those mabatis and goats don't actually arrive. Some of them end up, miraculously in some important people's, garages further south. Number 3, that these communities, instead of encouraging them and enabling them within their own communities to continue with the processes, part of the instruction is that we create legislation, in this case specifically designed to try civilians in military courts. And the best example is that those terrible, difficult Karbojong, rather than dealing with the underlying issues. But number 4, and importantly, I was a witness to the Karamojong of the South, disenfranchising Teso and Lango of cattle. And this is something that happened around Soroti as early as 1987, where cattle from the north was being drawn south in the name of Karamojong of the South. These are issues, as Angelo says, Ugandans predominantly know this. People don't like to talk about the things on the microphones in the open. And my concern is that we are fudging big issues, fudging nuances, fudging almost an apparent political narrative, some of which possibly I also opt to leave off air. That the design of NRM, the way they came to distort the political economy of the Republic of Uganda from really their struggles in Luweero, including the fact that we can't forget that as Simon is talking about dispossessing people, I hope, Simon, you also know that in Luweero in the early 80s, there were communities that were deliberately chased from their lands and properties in Luweero as something that Milton Obote calls actually, in part, genocide, because there were targeted communities there. These are things that have never been discussed, So instead of actually us addressing these, we are trying to wrap it up.
Sometimes when you're making a good point, then you throw in Milton Obote, then the point goes somewhere.
To me, that's the biggest point.
I sort of know that, but in a way that is also part of the problem. But I think Ugandans for some
that we are displaced to Balaalo by that war.
No. The Balaalo, for the record, no, it was northern, eastern, and western communities. In fact, the Balaalo were the community that remained as part of that, and it was a deliberate move. And the reason why I say that is that actually the Balaalo went substantially support NRA, and some of those Balaalo, in quote, are the Balaalo who moved from refugee camps and refugees who were not necessarily possibly Balaalo, and then link it to the Balaalo who are actually now non-Ugandan Balaalo, because what I'm going to say, some of the current Balaalo, and that's why Angelo's report is very important, and I just want to make it a brief thing, some of the Balaalo currently in northern Uganda are allegedly people who had been chased from Tanzania. How did they enter the Republic of Uganda? How did they find their way via Isinjiro to Kampala to the other end of the river? We do not know. Acholi and Lango and Teso and West Nile are post-conflict communities. Political leaders, across the political divide, political leaders need to be able to address post-conflict situations rather than finding victims of which you said that, well, you cheek, you don't know how to look after your family, we'll come and help sort you out and show you how to do it. There is something criminal. There's something criminal, and there is something that the state knows. And Mr. Museveni is later, Simon, Mr. Museveni is playing smart. He knows more than what he's saying in that letter. He's basically being more sensible.
Calling it unconscionable. But pause there for a second.
Yes, thank you.
Nora Oraga again says, even Angelo is speaking in tongues. On the Balaalo saga, President Museveni is on the right side of the law of the land and the right side of a leader's moral compass. It is the right decision to ban and criminalize free-ranging livestock, large herds of animals, and an area in which majority residents are of smallholder sedentary farming households. Honorable Mbide, let's come to you.
This is a very serious topic.
Oh, by the way, there's someone, Victor Charles, says, wherever you got that actually stroke lawyer from.
I already advised him.
You may even have to end that.
He is going to mislead the discussion. It was expected to provide some historical context in terms of land ownership and how it has evolved over the years. Most of the affected persons in this discussion have been in IDPs. Your own microphone.
I don't know why people would need to praise President Museveni over this matter. It is clear. He has been in leadership almost getting 40 years. This matter to do with land, he has been here. He reversed the 1975 land reform decree of Idi Amin. And he was a protagonist in establishing all changes during the 1995 Constitution and, of course, the preceding legislations. The President is aware of the land policy of 2013 and the requirements under that policy, particularly to do
with customary land tenure systems in terms of management, use, and protection of rights thereunder. Whatever has not been done, it is because of him. Land, as a factor of production, carries a price. There is a difference between ownership and use of land. And all of those are canvassed well within the laws of Uganda. Now, we are dealing with an inelastic product called land. There is a population that is actually growing and moving. Now, you establish a system that allows everybody, under Article 26, to own property, and of course there is a requirement that such ownership is protected. Now, how does the government implement Article 26 vis-a-vis a president issuing orders for loss of such property? You know, he has to be wrong in either. The president is wrong in either way. So there is no way you can turn around and tell me that he has been right here, he has been right there. When you look at the executive orders have ranged in terms of reasons. The first reasons were to do with indiscipline. That the Balaalo are correctly right and rightfully there and own their cattle there, but the problem is that their cows are now skedaddling from their own farms and eating into other people's crops. They should leave. Then he is told, somebody tells him that, by the way, there is foot and mouth disease, please, if they go, they will now spread the whole thing. Then he stops it. He is the one, he is the protagonist doing everything. The president of the Republic of Uganda should tell the people, because this Balaalo, when you look at how, for example, they acquire ownership, because you see, before you even engage in the effect, let us first of all look at how somebody gets or obtains ownership. They will show you their sale agreements that they have bought land. The sale agreement have got families that have got resolutions, family resolutions. There is the Rotqueni who gets 5% of the payment. Rotqueni.
Query.
Now that one has got clear reference to the cultural leader. Then you have got now the compliance procedures undertaken by the district security. Compliance with all particularities of obtaining this piece of land under a tenure that has been agreed upon. You have got all the clear stamps for LLCs from LLC 1 up to LLC 5 of the district. Then you have got now a conveyance process where somebody obtains his title, either lease, either a license, either anything. So once somebody has acquired that, then the law protects that person from losing quiet enjoyment. So when now the exigencies of the population and the historicity of ownership of land now come in, government must answer. These are questions for government to answer, led by President Museveni. Nobody should tell us. Now when you look at, because now I don't want people to start saying, the Chief Justice said, first of all, look at what the group that was sent to implement the current order, headed by the UPDF. The UPDF headed by the CDF. The CDF, the first interpretation he gave to one of the ministers is that he's an idiot. So let me tell you, at the forefront of this. So for us, we are okay, but we want the government.
In fact, they implemented it.
So it was an idiocy project.
Yes. So me, I would like to request. I wanted to persuade the panel here to actually agree with me that the government is wrong. And it is now wrong to the extent that it is pitting now the population against each other in a matter where they should have acted as protagonists into land management, land ownership. It is not true all over the world that everybody should be a land owner. No. But land should be used, and what has been taking place is an economy in northern Uganda. Now you see the exigencies of transferring now diseases from where they have been to where they have not been. Who is now going to, first of all, now, who is going to answer for all of those? So me, in my opinion, I think government has failed to establish a robust procedure on how to deal with the particularities of investments in Uganda. because they are investments that are land intensive. So you must tell the population how to deal with that. The population, it is not true, for example, when you go to Japan, that everybody owns land, but everybody uses it. And there must be somebody earning from the use of such land, because that person is actually a privileged owner of such a piece of land.
Honorable Mukasambe,
Yes.
pause there. And we go to Benjamin Katana.
Thank you.
I'm not even sure what question to ask you.
The question is already asked.
Right.
Thank you very much, Oscar.
But go to the microphone.
Yeah, I think the starting point is that this nomenclature, Balaalo, was coined here in Uganda to make reference to people whose vacation was to herd cattle for some people. But now it has taken many dimensions, including identity. That even Benjamin, who is an aristocrat 10 generations, by virtue of his ethnic identity and
height
appearance,
and appearance, yes,
is referred to as a Mraro. And so when you're having a conversation about the question of Balaalo in northern Uganda, it is important that we look at all these aspects. The other important aspect is that those herdsmen have lived in most of these communities even pre-1986. The other day I was on a talk show with Honorable Jimmy Aken, and he agreed that there were Balaalo in Lango, in Acholi, everywhere, many years ago. Number three is that because of factors like war, even if you started with the war that brought the NRA to power, it displaced many people in the cattle corridor. Some went to the west,
as Angelo was saying.
Some went to the north. But the wars that have happened, especially in northern Uganda, post-1986, the Holy Spirit movement, the LRA, they displaced very many people who ended up in internally displaced camps. And the cattle economy in that area was completely crushed. And that's why you see people say there's a lot of unutilized land in northern Uganda. This land was utilized previously. So there have been many things that explain the presence of the people that are now collectively referred to as Balaalo in northern Uganda. There have also been questions of citizenship. Honorable Mukasambide here is always talking about issues of citizenship. I also have strong interest in citizenship, whereas the person who has done that job before, but also in my academics I've also studied about citizenship. My thesis on master's is on citizenship and statelessness. So you have, when you read the different statements that Museveni has issued, but also if you listen to many politicians from Acholi, there are people who they claim came from Tanzania. There are people who they claim came from Rwanda, and people who came from DRC. The cattle keepers, especially on this continent of Africa, have for a long time now have a very outdated practice of nomadism. You have the Fulani moving from Nigeria, Cameroon, and even reaching Congo. But in modern times, it is an unacceptable practice. It is not acceptable anymore. But also in areas, and I think one of the listeners has sent a comment, in areas where you have a predominant community of cultivators, if you have cows that are not grazing on fenced lands, whether you own the land genuinely or not, you're going to have problems. And even these problems, by the way, now have come to the fore in northern Uganda because there's a spotlight. But even in other places, like Kasese, I know that the Basongola and the Bakonjo have been clashing because the cows end up in gardens and things of that nature. The other problem, and I think which this country keeps shying away, is the question of ethnic mistrust and suspicion. That
Oh, that's a big one.
Yes.
Let's stop for a break, and I'll give you 2 minutes on it, and then on to Honorable Katuntu, and back to Simon to conclude. But there's a Toki John, who's supported by Nora Oraga on X, formerly Twitter, says, Mwalimu, the Acholi who sold land to Balaalo are the poorest. Yeah. They sell land as low as 200,000 an acre. The Balaalo in Acholi are rich and connected and armed. Yeah. They took advantage of the poor Acholi who returned from the IDPs.
Exactly.
That's our talkie, John. And Nora Oraga quickly responds to him, the buyer bought air because they did not follow the law on customary tenure. We stop for a quick break. Welcome back from the break. Your 2 minutes on ethnic mistrust, so to speak.
Yeah, so Ugandans...
it's so interesting when Katana says ethnic mistrust, when people think DP, NUP, Baganda Party, and then you introduce the topic of ethnic mistrust regarding Balaalo and northern Uganda. But go ahead.
Yes, it cuts across the country that the thinking of most Ugandans is provincial in nature. And anybody who does not come from their community is an invader who should be treated as such. If it normally happens in campaigns, it happens everywhere. And you have just mentioned when you are saying that, that's why you see, for example, if you are a Katan and you are in NUP, people will say, Nayono, Awagiratia, NUP, how can this one support NUP? Not because of any other factor, but because of my identity. And so that conversation, we always sweep it under the carpet because maybe people think it's inappropriate to have, but I think we need to have it conclusively and comprehensively so that we are able to move on as a country now that we must live together.
This morning you were having a chat with Joseph Otieno because Joseph will accuse you of infiltrating NUP to also take it away.
For the record, of course, that's a joke.
The other aspect which is very, very, very critical is that people, when you are buying land, you're under duty because there's a need for verification. I think the challenge is that this issue of Balaalo in northern Uganda is being handled in a blanket manner. Some of these people claim they bought land. So when you are buying land, you have a requirement to do due diligence. If it is customary land that is owned by the clan and you come and buy it from Simon here, you will have problems. Who has no authority and has not gone through the customary processes that he has to go through. You have a problem. And the duty to do due diligence is on the buyer, not on the community. So there is need for verification. But unfortunately, the NRM government always handles these very sensitive issues in a very shabby manner. So when you start making blanket directives that now people are giving even an identity interpretation that when you talk about Balaalo, everyone who looks like this must leave, I think is where the problem is. And these shabby interventions normally are motivated by selfish political interests because you are going into an election and you have interest in this community voting you without addressing, because most of there have been discussions about compensation of these people who lost their cattle during war. They have not been compensated. That's why people are saying we bought land. And you have seen feedback. People are saying land is being bought at 200,000. Why? Because these communities, on account of war, have been rendered poor. They spent years not working, not at their homes, in camps, lost income, lost opportunities to earn. So they are desperate. And as a result, people who have some money, because when we are talking about most of these people that have acquired land, it is not restricted to people with the cows. There are people in government, people in the military, who have a lot of money, connections, and influence, who have even gotten big chunks, and so the issue cannot be addressed by just this order. Yeah. The order is not comprehensive enough to address the causes that have led us to where we are.
Okay.
It is just a knee-jerk reaction to win political capital in the forthcoming general elections.
An eviction without a court order.
Pardon?
It is a state-inspired eviction without court orders.
The Luanga Madi says, at Semoyamsoke, we want realistic lawyers like Mbite Ongang. you may let Katuntu free. He gets too official, acting normal under the law in abnormal situation.
That one from Bugwe.
So I hope Mbide and Katuntu have understood. And then Chikumcha Apollo Muhindo says, at Samuel Mseketel at Katana 001 that my grandmother believes the word Balaalo is derived from how they usually looked for padding jobs. They would move around home saying Ninyendo no Buraro. Nora, majority of land in Uganda is under customary tenure. Looking forward to read the audit. And Busoga informed, Abdu, you're saying, even they own. In a bogus gun and corrupt economy, there can never be a willing buy and sell. It's even worse and unfair for those who are boomed for over 20 years and enclosed in camps, bombed, I think, for over 20 years and enclosed in camps while forcing many in exile. Ugandans know who arms, gives money and transports whenever they are roaming in Uganda. Abdul, you're on microphone now.
Oh, well, one of the listeners says he always talk about the law in an abnormal circumstance. I have to plead guilty because that's what I am. Those who are fan of abnormal circumstances, I wish them well, but they're the ones who have brought us to where we are. But let me say this.
It's
we are caught.
Topic. This is Bwambale Juvenile follows on what Benjamin Katana is saying.
Yes.
Thanks for the program at Samuel Msoke. The issue of Balaalo is the same like of Basongora in Kasese district, and rest as you said, Benjamin.
I think we are caught between a rock and a hard place. Let me start with the Honorable Mbide says this is state-inspired eviction. It is not. It is actually state eviction.
Yes.
It's not state-inspired. It is state eviction.
That is correct.
And an eviction would attract, I go back to what the listener was talking about, it would attract consequences.
Yeah.
And these are the consequences. And guys, listen to me, you quote me. The en masse eviction is going to lead to litigation.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I am telling you the taxpayer will pay. The taxpayer, and is not going to pay millions, is going to pay billions. As the day follows night, don't even, let me tell you, don't even have any doubt that the state does something which is illegal, but politically common sense, and eventually they call even a Musomesa like Oscar, your taxes are going to be used to pay these people. Because some of them legitimately acquired the land. They did, legitimately. Now, whether you are legitimate, nobody is investigating that. It is all en masse. So really, to me, it was more of a political astute decision, but not legally tenable. But having said that, Oscar and Honorable Mbide talked about, but it has been my better subject. Uganda today is 240 thousand square kilometers. It is going to remain the same. The population, we are now 40 something million. 20, 30, 50 years today, you could even be 100 million. But the land here is going to remain the same. So conflict over land can only go on the rise. And who are the people planning for us this increasing population, how we are going to own and utilize it? It is in Abakova, it is in Amuganza, who is the other one again? You guys, let me tell you, until this country gets serious that the only resource this country has, Oscar, it is this land. Only one as a factor of production. And we must, because we need more food to feed the increased population. We need more housing, but on the same piece of land. And the population is increasing. So until we really plan for this land, we are going to have these problems. Having said that, let me go to the historical perspective. You see, let us look at the land tenure system of the North. Land is owned communally, customary, predominantly, customary tenure. Now, you have another group coming in, and they are not going to go for the customary tenure ownership. To them now, it is private, individual ownership. So they get land which was communally owned by families, by clans, by tribes, and now they own it individually. You are going to have a clash. Absolutely. And this is common sense. Who is thinking for this country, Oscar? Common sense. You are having people who are coming in, but they are coming to an area where they own land communally, majorly. But now you go in and you are now owning this particular land individually. Are you going to clash with the communities? Yes. Matters are not helped, Oscar, that after the war, and many of these people had been in IDPs, the economy was not doing well, and they survived. So land was cheap, and still remains cheap. And when we go in, we pay. And because of the situation they are in, they accept. So the political decision should have been at that time, sensitize the people on what to sell. But once they have sold, there are rights that have been acquired. And let me tell you, we have that ethnicity problem. Some of us, yes, I'm a proud Musoga, yes, but that's where it ends. That's where it ends. We now have tribal arrogance. This is us actually. This is us Balaalo. This is us Matwezi. This is us this is.
So you do a tribal dance and that's it. You move on.
Yes, you see, it's terrible. It's terrible. And unless we sort of outgrow this ethnicity arrogance and stop thinking petty.
Yes,
we are going to have this problem.
A question in law.
Sure.
Again from the listener Nora Oraga. Majority of land in Uganda is under customary tenure, meaning de facto that the majority of land in Uganda is owned by use rights. And this is what has protected our land from transnational corporate land grabbing. So Mbide is simply confusing the confuser.
No, we seem to have the same idea with the Waraga, but differently. She's using it differently. To me, I'm saying, yes, majorly the land is owned customarily and communal, but somehow we are moving away from that to individual ownership to have land titled, because families are increasingly getting titles over their land and so on. But it can't just happen to them tomorrow. You own this, you'll have a conflict, and that's what is happening in the north. Because some of these leaders will say this land belongs to the whatever clan it is. Then tomorrow they see Abdul Katuntu having 3 square miles, and this is my land. And the community is looking at it as formerly our land. So it is no longer our land, it is my land.
Yes.
And the president, I think he makes a very, very big mistake. A very, very big mistake in my view. Just to condemn these people and say, you go away. I think he has not addressed the problem. He has really not addressed the problem. We need to look at it differently. And Oscar, you believe me, conflict over land is going to be on the increase.
Well,
I'll give you an example. And maybe this formed the basis of the president's decision. It was not legal. In Uganda, one of the reasons the president didn't do well was Chibataka. I don't know whether you've heard about Chibataka in Uganda. And it was basically about the same. That there are these people who have got money, they have come and they are evicting us.
money and power.
Yes. So it is a real question, but you don't sort it out by evicting people who, first of all, some are Ugandans. And and who is a Mulalo? Is a Mulalo tribal? Or if Katuntu has a southern cows?
It is just like Kasita.
I become a Mulalo. So really, this ethnicity is not good for our country.
Simon, 2 minutes to conclude, because I want to talk about nominations.
Yeah,
beginning with you, Honorable Mbide.
I think in conclusion to this Balaalo question,
in northern
Uganda, I think the president and maybe his advisors, and I think I would say the Attorney General, who is the legal advisor today to the state, is that this thing should have been worked out in a more logical manner. That first, if you have issues of identity, that there are questions of who are the Balaalo, are they Ugandans, are they non-Ugandans, then and the procedures and how they acquired the land, is it legal or they acquired the land illegally? I think they should have come with modalities, and this is my opinion, that there should have been verification first before you blatantly and chasing people and everyone and saying, if you're Mulalo, if you have cows, live northern Uganda. There should have been a verification.
So who is this Mulalo? Any herdsman?
Any herdsman.
Or any tribe?
Who is not an Acholi. That's the issue right now.
So if it's
So right
cartooned,
now,
I'm asking, and I want to understand, because really it's about me getting some more information. If I am cartooned from Idudi, I bought some land and 400 acres in Peche, and I put animals.
It doesn't have 400 acres right now.
Okay.
1 acre.
And I have 400 animals there. Am I a Mulalo or not?
On your side.
And no, what I'm saying right now, if you're in that status,
Yes.
right now the status as per now,
Yes.
you're a Mulalo.
I'm a Mulalo.
Yes, and you should live at northern Uganda.
Right.
And so my position is
And then where does this kind of go to Uganda?
that
Your position?
that at least the people who talk to Tata Moz should really be able to really advise him that we shouldn't take this position. There should at least be a verification first to establish whether someone is a Ugandan or passes the parameter of acquiring land.
Yeah.
Where they have gotten the land.
Okay. Thank you. It's a topic we shall revisit, and I'll invite some more people. But I want you on microphone to talk about all these nominations. So if you want to squeeze in one sentence on
Yes. One thing I would like to advise government is to think about a comprehensive master plan on land use in Uganda. There are countries that are trying to do the best. When you look at a country,
there's so many papers in Uganda on land use.
Yeah, but those are just to the extent just papers. Implementation is implementation is usually a problem.
Implementation is the issue.
When you look at Rwanda, for example, there are areas where you cannot construct a single-storied house. There are areas where you cannot acquire more than 1 acre. There are strict rules on land use. In Uganda,
People are thinking 100 years today.
yes.
For us, we are thinking 50 years yesterday.
Yes, and here we are concentrating on refusing to talk about people who are better. And for me,
I'm going to invite you again to talk about because this topic is not going. Even Dongao tours now come in. There are hundreds of commercial plots in Acholi towns owned by Nyankore.
yes,
The same way Acholi owns plots in other towns of Uganda, but you can't come and fence 3 square miles of customary land with communal water hunting grounds and
Oscar,
think it will be business.
Honorable needs to be told that the manner of land use is definitely hinged to the kind of business. There are businesses that are land intensive and those that are not. The commercial plots are for commercial buildings.
Yeah.
Now ranches are for fencing. And clearly, Honorable needs to know this. It's not rocket science. So we got
nominations. Let's start with someone even told me which DP have you invited and which DP picks nominations from where. So
every Ugandan is free to come and pick nomination forms to vie on
Including
our ticket.
Balaalo.
Yeah, including Balaalo. Actually, Balaalo.
Because we are now setting different standards.
This nomination, this Balaalo nomination.
Balaalo are not
should be where should someone pick up nominations and from which DP?
DP is usually one because we are under the law. Every political party is a body corporate under Section 6 to the Political Parties Act. So clearly, a body corporate can't have any other.
So where does one pick up nomination forms?
It is going to be at the headquarters at Balintuma Road.
Right.
We have not yet outed the procedure.
Are you allowed
I cannot
to go
talk
to
about
the headquarters?
Yes, everybody is allowed.
And Dr. Lum is also allowed to go to the headquarters?
I'm sure he will even feature. Next week he must be there. He's allowed. We are already away from now the campaign mood for party leadership. That one is now sorted.
Okay.
What happened? For us, we are guided by the motto, truth and justice. So truth happened in Balaalo. Justice, we shall wait for court to tell us. But in the interim, we are away from that mood.
Okay.
We can't wait for
Joseph Otieno. So nominations are taking place. Where does one pick up nominations from UPC? Is it from Otieno wing? Is it from Akena wing?
No, if only this government had, this regime had been effective,
Had been
effective enough in dealing with national issues, they would have seen the Balaalo issues coming and focused on post-conflict reconstruction in northern Uganda and not allowed this to happen. Likewise, of course, in UPC's matter is in the hands of the High Court. A matter for a judicial review that should resolve the question of leadership within 6 months has taken 4 years and 4 months. So I really hope that over the next few weeks, the judiciary will get some space to dispose of the matter which is pending, and that matter is one which determines who the official president of Uganda People's Congress is and who therefore takes over the party headquarters of Uganda House. And
but time is ticking.
Time is ticking, and it's terrible. It has been extremely frustrating. At some stage, I've been wondering, should I go to the bush or not? But of course, since
the bush against
since there are not many bushes, left, we just really hope that common sense prevails and that the judiciary ups its game, and that people remember that whatever is happening in UPC will affect the Republic of Uganda, just as the question of the Balaalo and identity must affect the Republic of Uganda, and all of us must be very concerned.
Benjamin Katana, the president of Uganda, is picking up forms from the NRM secretariat.
The roads have been closed. That particular road has been closed for the last 2 weeks.
Oh.
Yes.
Is it because of road repair or because the president is picking up
because
forms?
the NRM has taken over the road.
Right.
Because of impunity of NRM.
Okay. But now in NUP, where do people pick up forms?
At our party headquarters, Kavle, Makerere, and the...
Are we allowed? Sometimes you're not allowed to enter that place.
Sure. No.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes the security people come and take over, but for now, they have not yet come. they are outside the gate, and I think you have seen videos of them beating up some of our members. But the process is ongoing. We have hit the road running. People have picked the nomination forms and others have returned them. The deadline for return of the forms has been extended to 23rd, I think up to 23rd of July, to enable those who had challenges with, sometimes the processes of verification at UNEB and where can drag on.
Yeah.
So to allow them an opportunity to participate in the process. Yes.
And Simon, are you going to pick up forms?
No, maybe for the record, I contested in the previous election for Northern Youth MP, and I think in the NRM primaries I was 4th, and I think I'm not interested right now in running for any political office. But as a subscriber and a person who belongs to the NRM, just like today I'm sitting in Ofono Pondo's chair, I still believe that the party will do well and is still doing well. And I think I'll join the president also in picking his nomination forms today.
I was just praying that I would invite you to pick up nomination forms from Uganda House when we will sort out the leadership and I'm the president. I'm disappointed.
The NRM.
Yeah, right. And Honorable Katonto, on this one, I guess for you go to Electoral Commission direct.
Yeah, I have little faith in these homes. I belong to some, to the Uganda People's Congress. I also belong to, and I'm a founder member of the Forum for Democratic Change, but I've since then moved on. I wish them well, but
there are new ones in town.
I have a little faith in them. But nonetheless, I wish them well.
There's PFF. Which one is Honorable Mpuga's?
DF. DA, Democratic Alliance? It's called what?
Now it's
the Democratic Front.
Okay, it is a DDD something. Whether DP or ADF.
in the 2 minutes that we have left, since you're the independent here, and you don't have a section A and section B of where to pick up nomination forms, what is your take on the volume of people picking up forms? And what's your take that NRM may make a few millions out of these nomination forms? And after taking the millions, will they manage? Because if you have 30 people paying 3 million for one position, it could. Are you able to manage that?
First of all, NRM, you need to congratulate them. I think they are not making a few millions; they are making tons of it. But in my view, I'm not so sure. But what I think is that they wanted to sieve, because what happens that every 5 years, Ugandans now think their jobs are available, and everybody is coming to look for a job. So, and it explains the people seeking for these offices. Matters are not helped when people say, you know, if you're a member of parliament, you get tons of it and so on. So people say, let me give it a go. If I can gain blah, 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 blah bit, and somehow if I'm lucky and I'm elected, then I become rich because I'll be earning that matter. They'll reach there and they'll be surprised that maybe now NMP has turned out to be as rich as they've been thinking. But it is because in Uganda today, Oscar, politics is less service. Those who think about serving are very few. People think you go there, you get this job, and you have security of tenure for 5 years, and then you see what happens after that. So the volume of people coming, the many people coming to look for tickets from the parties and those who come as independents is because increasingly political positions have become jobs. It's no longer about a service. And that's why even the institution I sit in, we are 500 something. But if you see people who participate in parliamentary proceedings, I've sat there for many years. If we are more than 50, we are between 50 and 100, really. People who will address our mind to serious issues and have an opinion. The rest have arrived.
Yeah.
They have got their position.
And on a few occasions when you are sure all of them will attend, they bring you to Kololo here. So
yeah, that's because there is even no physical space in the current chamber to sit. So Uganda should understand that actually people are looking for jobs, and let them be. Let them be.
Thank you so much, listeners of Capital Gang. Thank you, Star Cafe, for powering the gang. These are topics I'd wish to continue, so keep posting on X so that we understand more this conflict of the Balaalo. And thank you, Simon Bangkene, Acholi stroke lawyer. Thank you very much. Thank you, Benjamin Katana. Thank you, Honorable Mbide. Thank you, President Joseph Osiano. Thank you, Honorable Abdu Katondo. Should I stand up?
Yes. Yes, you need to stand up as usual.
Yeah. Yes, and let's get a photographer here to witness.
Greg Mills is called Rich State, Poor State. But most importantly, which I would like, I think next time I'll bring one for the Honorable Bide. Okay, I'll bring the three. Mr. Katana and yes,
especially since they want to take
and this book is about rich state, poor state, but why some countries succeed and others fail.
Yes,
I think it's a fantastic book for some of people who are on this political journey to read.
Thank you. I am Oscar Semoyamsoke, and I shall see you next week.